All right, what's up, everybody? I wanted to do another deal review for the newsletter. I got a lot of positive feedback about the ATM route analysis that I did a couple weeks ago. And so I wanted to send you guys some more thoughts about another deal. And I fired up Biz Buy Sell. Couple scrolls in, this deal looked pretty interesting at first glance. And so I wanted to just run through it with you and kind of give you my high level thoughts about this business in real time and just give you a sense of roughly how I would think about it. So we've got a furniture store in Eastern Tennessee. I'm assuming that's probably Knoxville, maybe Johnson City, but furniture store in East Tennessee. Let's look at the high level stuff. 6.25 asking price. They're doing 14 million of top line revenue. It's pretty good. About 175 of EBITDA, and they've got $1.2 million of FF&E. So that's furniture, fixtures, equipment, that kind of stuff. And then they've got about $3 million of inventory. So I love that, what I would call asset profile. So they've got, if you add these together, $4.3 million of hard assets, which is around 2/3 of the asking price, which is great. So I really like that. And the other thing that's of note here is seller financing available, right? So they're being very open about their willingness to offer seller financing, which is encouraging, right? The fact that they're not, head in the sand wanting all cash. A couple other things of note, and then we'll talk about deal structure and valuation and sort of generally how I feel about this. So the business has been around for 53 years. 2 different locations. So they have a flagship and an outlet. So that's actually across 2 stores that they're doing this. 200,000 square foot building, 44 total employees, which I think is good because it means that there's a little bit more organizational depth and complexity here. And selling for retirement probably means that the business is under optimized and there's some opportunities to improve operations, continue to expand their online presence. We'll talk about that. Interesting growth opportunity, also probably the biggest risk profile of the business. And they're willing to provide some seller transition assistance. So interesting, right? I actually really, back of a napkin, I like this deal quite a bit. I think it's pretty compelling. Let's start with just the purchase price, right? So they are asking for 6.25 or 6.25 million for an EBITDA of 175, which is just over a 3.5x multiple. It's about 3.6x multiple, just a little below that, which I think is extremely fair and reasonable and compelling for a business like this. I actually think that's very well priced. And so I think they're being pretty thoughtful about that, and makes me more interested in this business, candidly. So price seems to be great. Again, $4.3 million of inventory and FF&E. So back of a napkin, I like the collateral profile. I think the valuation is pretty reasonable. They're open to seller financing, which I also think is really, really cool. And so deal structure wise, I would probably look at this as a straight down the middle. I would go, if I wanted to do this deal, I would obviously get their full financials, and maybe there's some other things we'll uncover in diligence, and we'll talk about risks in a second. But I would get their financials and I would take it to a number of lending relationships, and I would probably ask for, if you've got $4.3 million of hard assets, you have $1.75 million of EBITDA, like 2.5 times that, or, even 2 times that. I would probably ask for like a $4 million loan or something equivalent to that, right? Like what's 175 times 2.5 would be $4.4 million, just under that, right? So I'd probably try to get $4.4 million of bank financing, and then I'd try to negotiate, which would be about a 2/3, 65% or so down payment. And then I would try to get the seller to carry the other $2 million over, a 5 to 7 year time horizon as a seller note. That would be my default deal structure. Now we'd see maybe the seller wouldn't like that. Maybe there'd be some pushback, but that would be my starting place. I think you could easily get a loan for over $4 million for this business. From an EBITDA standpoint, it's conservative. You've got tons of asset coverage, so there'd be very little to no airball, which is basically where a loan is larger than the business's assets. And so I think it'd be pretty easy to finance this deal. The price is right. The asset base is there. Candidly, I might even take a look at this thing myself because it's really interesting. But here's what I don't like about this deal, just to give you a sense. I don't like the fact that it's brick and mortar retail. Right. So they mentioned one of the growth opportunities, which may well be a growth opportunity, is online presence. I don't know enough about the furniture market to know how much of it is moved online, but I would have to imagine that online, Amazon, Wayfair, things like that are meaningful competitors that are increasingly difficult for them to compete with. And so one of the things I'd really want to underwrite or understand better is, what does the ongoing sales history of the business look like? Has the business been declining year over year for a lot of years, or is it growing, or is it holding steady, right? I'd want to really unpack and understand how much of a risk is Amazon to a business like this, and by Amazon I mean e-commerce as a whole, right? Furniture is not necessarily massively popularized in e-commerce, but you can certainly buy a lot of furniture online. And so I'd want to understand, who are their customers? Where do they buy? Do they, is the showroom a value add because people want to come in and see the furniture before they purchase it? And so maybe it's really resistant to e-commerce, or is that a big risk point? So that to me would be really probably the biggest piece of question mark that I would have about this business, is just, what is the online e-commerce competition profile look like, and how does that negatively impact the business's operation over time, right? Obviously, the business is doing $14 million of revenue today, which is awesome. But the fact that they're selling it for low multiple means they probably recognize that there's some meaningful competition from online. But understanding both the historical trends, so if the business was doing 16 million last year and 18 the year before and 20 the year before, I'd be really concerned about buying this thing even at this multiple. If revenues have stayed flat or even grown a little bit, I wouldn't be as concerned, but I'd want to really unpack the demand for furniture online versus in person, what their value proposition is, how they differentiate from online competitors, and if you could potentially sell online and capture some opportunity there. I'd probably call a few people I know in the furniture business, or find some folks and pick their brain about what's happening in the industry to get a better sense of whether or not there's a real opportunity, or furniture stores are dying, or if they're great and they're very resistant to changes in e-commerce and things like Amazon really disrupting their industry. So I think the price on this deal is really interesting. I think the asset base is really interesting. Structure-wise, this could be a really cool deal. And candidly, I like it a lot, but the competitive nature or the competitive dynamics would at least concern me and be something I'd really want to unpack. Hopefully this is helpful, and I'd love your thoughts. Reply, let me know. What do you think about this deal? Is it interesting? And what do you think about the furniture business? Is it a space to play in, or is it one that is going to get killed by Amazon? Thanks for being on my newsletter, and I'll talk to you soon.